Welcome back to Becoming a Soulful Parent. In this section, we're going to be looking at our homes and Shalom Bayit. And just how we talked about different partners in our parenting for the last 3 sessions, this one will be looking at our homes as a partner in our parenting. What would it mean to think about our home life, the way that we set it up, the values in our homes as helpful in raising our families? And I think what happens a lot for many of us is that our home life is also really a contentious place, right? It's a place where there are a lot of needs, our kids' needs, our spouses' needs, all the stuff that needs to get done in our homes. So this session is an invitation to take a step back and to take a breath and to really imagine what we would ideally want our home lives to look like, both in terms of our partnerships and our relationships, as well as the activities and the values in our home. You know, there's a great couples therapist who once said that the children reside in the space between parents. So making sure that that space between parents in that couple is good and positive and whole to nurture everyone in the home is a really important piece that we're going to be looking at. And the second is to think about the activities and values in our home. What are the things that we do? What do we celebrate? How do we behave? So we're going to be looking at both of those ideas in this session. So one thing I'd suggest that you do is to start with a guided imagery, and we've written about it in the Facilitator Handbook, and it's really a way to get people to imagine what the ideal home life could look like. Talk about entering into your home and it feels different, the air is a little bit different, you walk from room to room and you see the children playing and the way you interact with your spouse, and all of that feels a little bit different, and you feel at home and at peace. And then just ask for their reactions. And by the way, it's fine if some people don't get into this. So if some people don't want to do it or nothing happened for them, that's also fine as well. But for those who did, ask them kind of what came up for them. What was their ideal home life? What did it look like? What did it feel like? What were elements of it? And after you introduce that concept and that idea, you'll move into the text, which is a Mishnah that talks about God saying to Israel that there's really no other vessel that can hold blessing as much as shalom, or peace. So put more plainly, what this means is that if we feel like there's not a sense of kind of peace and at peace and kind of calm within ourselves, or even in any of our relationships, that all of the blessings that we have will be elusive and we won't be able to hold on to. I think we all know this on a personal level, right? If we're really stressed out and anxious and distracted, that we're not going to be able to be attuned to the blessings that we have of food that we're eating for breakfast, of waking up in a warm bed in the morning, of the children and their laughter that we hear every day. But I think this text can be taken one step further in understanding blessing, not only in terms of what we have, but also in who we are. I really focused on the couple here. What would it mean for each couple to think about themselves as a blessing to the world, right? And how we interact with other people, what we choose to do for a living, what we volunteer for. And I think these are probably ideas that many of us had when we were first married or first in a relationship, that we really had a sense of mission and purpose, that we came together to do something and for something, And I know this for myself, my husband and I think a part of our kind of vision for ourselves as a couple is that we love to make Judaism relevant and accessible to lots of people. But when there's tension and stress around any process that helps to bring that out, like say around inviting guests over for a Shabbat meal, there's a lot of stress in the planning of it, that the actual activity of manifesting our blessing to the world is tarnished a little bit. So give participants time to really think about this first text in all of those different arenas, both personally, interpersonally, and also what would it mean for them to think of themselves as being a blessing to other people or to the world. The second text we're going to look at is a midrash from Genesis Rabbah, and it talks about Isaac bringing Rivka into Sarah, his mother's tent. So this Chaye Sarah, the portion starts with the matriarch Sarah dying, and in the end of the parsha, Isaac finally finds a wife, Rebecca, and he loves her and he's comforted by her. But this phrase of Isaac bringing Rivkah into Sarah's tent is then commented on by this midrash, right? What happened there when they went into the tent? What were some of the elements of Sarah's tent that made it a place that ultimately could be comforting to Isaac? So what this midrash does is it really kind of itemizes 4 different aspects of Sarah's home, which we can kind of hold up as the good home. And we want to offer participants to really unpack that and think, what does that symbolize? What do these 4 elements symbolize to them? How is it manifested in their own family life? From the cloud and the doors being opened expansively, and there being blessing in the dough, and there being a candle lit from one Shabbat to the next. Have them kind of unpack it and think about what these symbols can mean for them. You can offer some suggestions as well, right? Some traditional commentators say that the cloud is God's glory, or a sense of godliness, or protection that is kind of hovering over everyone's home, or the ideas of your house being the doors being open wide expansively can have to do with welcoming in guests or strangers. Blessing in the dough can have anything to do with mealtime or nutrition or eating in your home. And the idea of the candle being lit from one Shabbat to the next can really have to do with how are things celebrated in your home? How do you mark time? You're going to then move to the journaling and spiritual chavruta, and here you'll ask participants to choose between focusing on the shalom bayit in their relationship with that first text about blessing and shalom, or the activities and values that are in their home through these different symbols that the Breshit Rabbah text brings, or that Midrash brings. Session 6 is your final session with your group. And there are really 2 goals of this session. The first is for participants to reflect on what they've learned over the last 5 sessions. And the second is to solidify that sense of community in the group and think about next steps. So what you'll do to start off after your transition exercise is for participants to take a quote. You have a text sheet with a grid of different quotes, which you can cut up and just scatter around a table or the living room, and have participants look at the quote that speaks to them the most. These are quotes from the past sessions and the past text sheets. Some of them are new quotes that they haven't seen before, and just ask them to be open to kind of where are they right now and what's speaking to them. And then ask your participants to grab a spiritual chavruta, probably not someone who they've worked with before, not their spouse or partner, but somebody new. And a part of this is really to emphasize that we can learn and have meaningful connective time with anybody in this group. After that, you'll want to bring them back together to just have quiet journaling time for themselves to think about one learning that they're taking away from this group, and then have a group discussion. And then as a closing exercise, you're going to want to have them write down on a separate slip of paper one thing that they learned specifically from one other person in the course. Just a kind of a bracket that the only danger in this approach is that maybe one person will be left out. The quiet person in the group won't, who didn't share a lot, won't be chosen or won't be chosen to be that person's learning that they write down on that slip of paper. So be sure in your mind to be sensitive to that, and maybe as a facilitator to choose specifically those people who are a little bit quieter and think about what they added to that group learning. And then you'll want to end by talking about next steps. How does this group want to continue? Do they want to continue meeting maybe once a month? Who wants to be the facilitator? Maybe there should be a rotating facilitation. Leave it up to the group to decide. What we found is that these groups want to continue meeting, so give them a platform to discuss that. And then end with something about community. There's a great Parker Palmer quote that community begins with our capacity for connectedness. And that's what everybody here did. They opened up their capacity to connect to each other, to Jewish wisdom literature, to ideas from the secular world as well, but most of all to themselves and to their own unique families and family life. So all of that is as a whole, is really that community that they're developing. And I want to thank you, really, for being on this journey with us, for being a facilitator of this group. Your participants will thank you, and we thank you. Thank you for helping create more communities of soulful parents.